Hello, Matuji, and you're watching Hornbill TV's newsroom. As Narendra Modi's government completes 100 days of its third term, Home Minister Amit Shah announced that the One Nation, One Election initiative will be implemented within the next 5 years prior to the end of this term. In his Independence Day speech as well, last month, Prime Minister Modi strongly advocated for the policy, arguing that frequent elections were hampering the country's progress. This proposal by the BJP-led NDA government has elicited mixed reactions among political parties in Nagaland as well. Lok Sabha MP Supungmaran Jamir criticized the policy, calling it inconsistent with India's democratic principles and constitution. He stressed that the Election Commission as an independent body would ultimately decide the issue, but he viewed the BJP's push for the policy as an unrealistic imposition on the nation's complex electoral system. Similarly, NPF legislator Kuzuluzu Azonina voiced his opposition, linking the proposal to the Uniform Civil Code, which he argued was ill-suited for a secular Christian majority state like Nagaland. He was confident that his party would reject the policy. On the other hand, the Lok Jan Shakti Party Ram Vilas took a more measured stance. In a press release, State President S. Richard Humsoy acknowledged both the advantages and concerns of one nation, one election. And today, to discuss about this, we'll be joined by our Associate Editor El Muli from the newsroom. Hello, Sir El, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can too.
Right, El, before we move on with this discussion, for the viewers to know more about it, could you just tell us what one nation, one election basically means?
Yeah, I think the nation is really, especially the political institutions and the political parties across the country, they have been really looking forward to one particular event that we have been talking about since 1967. So, one nation, one vote is basically a proposal of the BJP government to synchronize all the state and union parliamentary elections and to conduct them at a specific time, maybe in a one day or in phases, but within a single season period. So this was proposed way back, simultaneous elections across the country were being held till 1967 or two.
Okay.
And actually it was only during 1968 and 69 that the government decided that simultaneous elections is not feasible for a country like India. Now we have almost 120 crore people, and imagine the logistical challenges that will go into organize a singular elections for all the state and union parliamentary elections. So 1968 and 9 was the were the years that the government decided this is too heavy for a country like India, and that also gave an opportunity for the political parties who were resisting that idea to tell the center that, see, now that in 68 and 69 many state assemblies were dissolved prematurely. So that was the reason why we stopped having simultaneous elections across India from 1967. So now the BJP government has decided to make this one nation, one vote system uniform and to be part of the constitutional framework of the country. So they proposed this, and especially Prime Minister Narendra Modi, ever since he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, he has been advocating this to be held. And yes, it is. The idea is simply to have simultaneous elections across the country.
Okay, so what constitutional amendments would be required to implement the one nation, one election proposal then?
A lot, and that is exactly the reason why I brought in a note here. It is not simply something that can be achieved by an executive order. It is not something that can be achieved by a constitutional sitting in the parliament. There are a lot of complexities involved if at all the government decides to really start implementing this. Especially, it is not so much about the logistical challenges Atu. It is mostly to do with the changes that will require in the Constitution of India, one of the most elaborate and perhaps the biggest constitutional book in the world. So there are a lot of legislative tools that they are going to employ, and they are going to have to make a lot of amendments, and I will read out some of them, just some of them. So these are the changes that will be required in the Constitution of India if the government decides to go ahead with one nation, one vote. Article 83. So this article pertains to the Lok Sabha tenure. So in order for you to go ahead with one nation, one vote, you have to change the framework and the tenure framework of the state legislative assembly. So you will need amendments to align the terms of all the state assembly tenures, the years. You have to align it with the Lok Sabha elections. So that will be making a change to Article 83. Another is Article 85. So Article 85, as you know, it deals with the dissolution of the Lok Sabha. So in order for you to have simultaneous elections across the country, you will have to change how and when elections are to be called or summoned or conducted. And especially this will be required if during the time that one nation, one election system is on and some other state was required to be dissolved, then you need a change in Article 85. And then there is another. Now this is similar to Article 83. So similar to Article 83, Article 172 of the Constitution of India needs to be amended so that you address the duration of the state assemblies. So again, you have to synchronize the terms of the Lok Sabha, the tenure of the Lok Sabha with that of the state assemblies. So you have to make them similar. You have to align them both together at a particular and specific span of time here. Another change you have to make in the Constitution of India in case we have to implement one nation, one vote is Article 174. So this article covers the summons of the state legislative assemblies. So you need to establish some kind of a framework, a schedule. So you have to sit with the legislative assemblies or the leadership to come at an agreement when the election will be held. You have to schedule it because it is not like we are having some kind of a village council meeting. Right. It's like you just call up someone and, hey, I'm right now at home, come over with a VDB secretary and with a GP and come over to my house and let's meet tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. You are going to have conversations with legislative bodies across the state who are either in power or being dissolved or are engaged in some kind of legislative activity. So you need to sit together, all of you, and you have to schedule it according to Article 174. And another very important article that you need to be able to make changes in order for you to have simultaneous elections is Article 356. So Article 356 is something that we do not normally call in the country, and these are exceptions, precedence rule. So Article 356 relates to the imposition of precedence rule in the states. So currently right now we don't have precedence rules. Of course, we have the union territories that are practically de facto governed by the president, but right now we don't have precedent rule in the 28 states. So if we need a one nation, one vote system in place, you need to change Article 356. So you need changes to clarify how simultaneous elections would affect the state under precedence rule. So for instance, let's say we have decided to go ahead with one nation, one vote. Now somehow along the way, after we have elected a state body in some of the states, let's say Nagaland, we just had one nation, one vote. We had simultaneous elections with the center, and even in the state, we have already conducted elections. Now, Chief Minister Nefirio is the head of the state, and suddenly some kind of a political upheaval comes up, Atu.
Right.
And then the center says, no, Nagaland is in trouble. We are going to impose president's rule, even though we had just the previous month conducted simultaneous elections and we have already set up the state leadership. So how are you going to deal with this? We have a president's rule now. So how is one nation, how is a one nation, one vote system going to explain and clarify the position of Nagaland, which is now which is under president's rule? So these are some of the changes that we need to make in the Constitution of India to be able to to some level, with some level of credibility, hold simultaneous elections across the country.
And whatever you mentioned, those are just a few of the amendments that should be changed, but would you say that there will be a lot more?
Yeah, there is a lot more. We have not talked about the logistic and the administrative changes that we have to make at the ground level, because when we talk of elections, we are not simply talking about electing people sitting there in the assemblies or in the parliament. We are going to need manpower that we have never ever imagined before. For instance, I read data in regard to the logistical demands that we will be requiring if we go for simultaneous elections. Just for one day voting, in case the entire 28 states of India and the 8 union territories of India go to voting, for one day you need 30 lakh electronic voting machines.
Right.
We're just talking about the machines, just the machines. We did not talk about the personnel that will be required, the massive number of government employees and personnel that will be required to administrate the electoral process. We have not talked about the massive number of security personnel, paramilitary personnel, police personnel, officers. We have to take into account the massive logistical demands that one nation, one vote will require. So how many articles did I point out to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
There are at least 10 of them. I listed them, but I thought we would be having a conversation that will just be about 20 or 30 minutes. So I just thought to pick up some of the most important ones in this regard.
Right, okay. And then how would this proposal impact the federal structure of India, especially considering the autonomy of the state governments here?
I don't think if it will. I think it will. And what the opposition parties in India have been saying all this while, ever since the Narendra Modi government announced going for simultaneous elections across the country, they have been saying, and this is the heart of the argument for those who are opposing one nation, one vote. This is the heart of it. It is going to infringe upon the autonomy of the states. It is going to redesign the federal structure of the state legislative assemblies. So this is not this is not just one reason why the opposition parties are opposing. There are many other reasons, but this is the heart of it. They believe that if we are going to have simultaneous elections, then we are in the first place changing, modifying, and some political parties have even used the words destroy the federal autonomy that the states enjoy. So that's one of the reasons. And of course, similar to that argument about why the one nation, one vote system will affect the states, they believe that if we are going to have a structure where we have simultaneous elections across the country, it is going to start a tradition where there is centralization of power.
Right.
Now, because why are we holding elections together simultaneously across the country in the first place? It is because it is by the mandate of the parliament that we are going to hold. It is not because of the mandate of the state legislative constitutional frameworks. It is by the mandate of the center, and that itself says there will be centralization of power in the hands of the centralization of power in the hands of the central government. So the states feel, and the political parties in the opposition bench, they feel that this is actually a start to how the center would start infringing into the autonomy of the states. And the second is, if we're going to hold simultaneous elections, a lot of developmental process and activities will be disturbed too. Because when we plan development, we have state outlays, we have state budgets, we have budget sessions, we have yearly administrative outlays for every state, and all these do not run on a single time frame. I think Nagaland, after this tenure was elected, I think they had the budget season just about 3 months after the elections in Nagaland was conducted. But in Assam, they had already conducted 2 years ago. And for Jammu and Kashmir, which is going to elections today, they will have to sit for their budget sessions and to decide the developmental roadmap only maybe after 2 months, because the elections are being held now, today. Right. So we don't run on a single schedule. So if we are going to hold simultaneous elections, then the developmental workflow of 28 states across the country will be definitely affected. So that's also another reason why the opposition feels that one nation, one vote will be just another excuse for the central government to start breaking and infringing into the autonomy of the federal states in India.
Right. So moving forward, what mechanisms would be needed to handle cases where state or national governments dissolve before their term ends? I think you have mentioned about this earlier also, but would you please let us know about it in details?
This is going to need an answer straight out of at least 3-4 textbooks or two. But let's just go a little bit into what simultaneous elections will demand from the states and from the center.
Right.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, during the Nagaland Legislative Assemblies this year, I think there were almost about 2 lakh, if I'm not mistaken. I have forgotten the exact number, but about 2 to 250 lakh security personnel, paramilitary personnel, state personnel, and government employees that were engaged solely in organizing the elections. Now India has more than 120 crore people. It's one of the most populous nations in the world. And we talked about how we will need, just for one day, we will need 30 lakh electronic voting machines. We did not talk about how many people will have to be engaged in this process if we are going to have simultaneous elections. We have not yet talked about the security personnel, the reshuffling that has to be done across literally lakhs and lakhs and lakhs of government administrative leaderships, from the village level to the subdivisional level to the government. And that is only for a single state. But if we are going to go across the entire 28 states, I don't know. My brain is not braining right now. If you really think about the personnel, the equipment, the transport services, the personnel from every government department across, it's it's something unimaginable. I think I'll not be able to speak on that right now.
Right. Also, how does this proposal align with the Election Commission's capacity to conduct simultaneous election at such a large scale then?
Yeah, I think this has always been a concern of the Election Commission of India. I think during the 5 state elections the previous year, when Haryana, UP, they all went to vote, one of the concerns that was raised was, in order for us to organize something, we should also have a person manning each of the function of the particular activity. So it's like having a company where there are 100 tasks and responsibility to do and to fulfill, but there is only 20 people working in all those 100 tasks. So we don't have the manpower right now. We don't have the logistical measures that we will be using to be able to accomplish those responsibilities and tasks. We need personnel that are spread out across the country. Some are in Jammu and Kashmir fighting terrorists. Some are fighting Maoists. There are law and order people across communities where 120 crore people live. They are engaged in law and order, administrative functions. So the Election Commission, they have been expressing a level of worry. If we are going to do this, then it is not something that will be completed in 1 or even 2 months, even 3 months, not even 5 months. It will need at least, then I'm putting the word at least, 1 year to be able to complete at least 2 to 3 phases of elections in the country. So those are some of the concerns that the electoral authorities have been voicing. So on hindsight, I believe they are actually telling the government of India that before we go into the game, let's make sure that we have all the right players and the right number of people who will be engaged in that activity. Otherwise, let's wait a little while. That's what they have been expressing.
Okay, sir, what are the political benefits and drawbacks for both national and regional parties under this system, and would regional issues be overshadowed by national campaigns then in this case? What do you think?
I think one of the reasons why the opposition political parties have always been opposed to the idea of having simultaneous elections is, first thing, that the elections are going to infringe on the federal structure and the federal character and the federal autonomy of the states of India. First thing. But they have tied another reason to that particular reason. The first one, the infringement into the federal character of the country. They have used this particular reason. If we are going to have elections simultaneously, then it will only be the leading party at the center that is going to benefit from the elections. And I think we have had a newsroom, I think way back 2002 or a long time ago, we sat together and we had a discussion in the newsroom about some of the political parties complaining that this is not so much about streamlining the electoral head of the state. It's not so much about streamlining our electoral activities and setting a roadmap for development together. It is so much about, and it has always been about, highlighting the achievements of the government at the center. So if we are going to have simultaneous elections, the Congress said earlier also, the regional parties are going to disappear because the government is going to use its machinery. And let's be honest here, which one is bigger? The parliamentary elections or the state elections? For people like us in towns and villages, of course, the state elections are more important, but people are going to look at who is going to be the prime minister now.
Right.
Who is going to be who is going to be the deputy prime minister? Who is going to be the home minister? The media is going to focus only on that, and it has always been the truth. You can just look at how the United States presidential elections and their electoral processes always bring up. They never go to the counties. The issues are never about the counties, the smaller administrative districts of the states. It's always about the people at Washington. So if we're going to have elections simultaneously, nobody is going to remember the LJP or the NDPP or the NPF. Everyone is going to look who is going to be the next prime minister, who is going to be the home minister. So that is the reason why even the Congress, they feel no, they're going to take away a lot of electoral capital from the smaller state and regional parties if we're going to have elections simultaneously. So it will only benefit the central government, because this is the time that the media will focus only on the next prime minister or the next home minister, and they will focus only on the developmental pitches that they are going to pitch to the voters in this regard. So the opposition parties, they have been saying, no, let's not do this, because if you are the one ruling at the center, you are the one who is going to benefit, and the states are not going to benefit. The state issues are never going to come up on the face of television screens. It wouldn't come up in the newspapers.
Right, and lastly, when it comes to election, of course, the voters, they are the most important, they play the most important part here. So how might one nation, one election influence voter behavior? And would voters consider national and state issues separately, or would one dominate their choices?
Remember the last time we had our parliamentary elections, everyone felt that Dr. Chamben Muri would be the winner. But look at how it turned out. We cannot predict the choices and the direction a singular electoral activity will go, from which who will win, we don't know. Who the people are going to vote for, we don't know. But it has always been a fact that while India is a party-based democratic institution, they are never going to vote for the party. So we cannot predict that first. They are always going to vote for the individual. And that is the reason why way back 1999, when people were talking about bringing the BJP to Nagaland, there were curses. People were praying across the state, saying that, oh, we are not going to let this party come into Nagaland because Nagaland is a Christian state. Now we have a government that is ruled by a partner that has the BJP in it, Atu. So while we don't know what or who, which party or which individuals the people are going to vote for, or whether they are going to be concerned only with the state leadership or with the central leadership, and you know, cult personality worship is very big in India. While we don't know that, we know that while we don't know the direction it will take, what we know is that the focus will always be on the central person, on the central government individuals. Like I said earlier, the focus will, especially for the media, nobody will be talking that much about the state. It will be only on the central government personalities, especially the Prime Minister and the Home Minister, if we are going to elections simultaneously across the country. All
right, thank you so much, Al. I think that's about all for today. Thank you so much for all your inputs.
Thank you.
That was our Associate Editor L. Muli from the newsroom discussing about the One Nation, One Election. As mentioned earlier, Home Minister Amit Shah had announced that the Prime Minister Modi-led government will be implementing the One Nation, One Election before the end of this term. And to know if this will be successful or not, I think we'll just have to wait and see. That's all we'll have for now. Keep watching Hornbill TV.